Vaughan to Memphis, Tennessee, and to be a part of what I think is a really important conversation that we need to be having, not just today, but on an ongoing basis. There are things going on in our world these days that I will tell you upset me beyond words, and I could not sit back anymore and not have this conversation, especially when we're talking about blues, especially when we're sitting in Memphis, Tennessee, especially when the National Civil Rights Museum is directly across the street from the Blues Hall of Fame. This is an important conversation to have, and I feel especially honored to have this amazing panel of people willing to sit up here with us and have an open and honest and respectful dialogue about what we know can be a very difficult subject. Dr. Trent is an accomplished public historian and has worked with several noted organizations and projects, including the National Park Service, the Frederick Douglass National Historic Site, and the Smithsonian Institution's National Museum of African American History and Culture, where she contributed to the exhibition Defending Freedom, Defining Freedom, the Era of Segregation, 1876 to 1976. She was featured in Breaking Free, an underground special for the WGN America Drama Underground. She is a member of the American Association of State and Local History and the Association of African American Museums. And Dr. Trent is a Phi Beta Kappa graduate of Howard University, where she also earned a doctorate in American history. So I'm going to turn the panel over to our very esteemed and very educated and knowledgeable moderator, Dr. Trent. Please give her a round of applause, and then she will introduce the rest of our panel. Thank you, Dr. Trent.
Thank you so much, Barbara. It is an honor to be here, and of the many things I do, none of them I would ever think would allow me to be on the stage at Alfred's, so y'all don't want me to sing. So this is the closest it'll ever get, so I'm going to enjoy this moment today. I would just like to introduce our panelists. To my far left is Marquise Knox, a multi-talented blues musician from St. Louis. I mean, just crazy, stupid talented. You just listen to his records and go on YouTube and you're like, now how many instruments do you play, dog? And sing and do that. I think he should hula hoop at the same time, you know what I mean? It's just remarkable. Next to me we have Mr. Jim O'Neill, Blues Hall of Famer and co-founder of Living Blues Magazine and Rooster Blues Records. Yeah, he's done a few things. I'm just kidding, Jim. And then we have our only other female here on the panel, Miss Teeny Tucker, Blues Award nominee and 2005 IBC Finalist and fabulous women and blues specialist in her own right. And then our final panelist, I'm just going to say this, if you don't know who this man is, you just need to get up and get out because you're in the wrong room. You're just in the wrong room, am I right? Blues Hall of Famer and American music icon, give it up for the one and only Bobby Rush. So, this afternoon, believe it or not, is a powerful moment. Not just because Barbara had this vision of having this thought-provoking conversation, but because it is 2019. In 1619, several Africans were delivered to Jamestown, Virginia in exchange for food and water, becoming the first Africans in what would become the American colonies. 200 years later, on the 4th Chickasaw Bluff on the Mississippi River, a city named after the ancient Egyptian city was founded, Memphis. It would become a major commercial port and thoroughfare for the domestic slave trade, as well as the cotton industry, fueled on the backs of the descendants of the early African laborers who arrived 200 years earlier. So our discussion today, blues and race, are very American topics, rooted in those two preceding events. They are the descendants of this American legacy. Our panelists today are here to talk about that. They are very real, they are very much connected to this American legacy. What we're going to talk about today is what blues was, what it is, and what its future holds, as well as the complexities of its history and its legacy. So, it's a little bit of a heavy topic, but we'll have some fun this afternoon. So I want each of you, for yourselves, define the origins or the beginnings of the blues.
Since I'm the youngest. I think for me, my family come from Grenada, Mississippi. My mother's people, my dad's family come from Arkansas. My dad's grandfather comes from North Carolina. So, and his folks was directly African. So for me, the blues is the origin of black people. It is those long hours in the field. It is those days longing for something better. And in a lot of people's lifetime, when they were coming along in those days, you knew you would live and you would die in that oppression. And so to me, that is what the blues is. It is that understanding of what we went through and that it still goes on today. So that's what I think the original blues is, just the beginning of black life in America.
I guess I'm the next youngest, right? Well, you know, I can actually speak of blues and where it originated from in a personal sense or in an educational sense. And she pretty much laid out the educational sense when in 1619 slaves were brought over here. And I believe that blues was in the belly of their beings. That's what they felt, that's what they knew. Now for me, I'm 30%, and I know this because I just had my DNA results back. My family came over on my father's side. See, I have the advantage of both sides, because my mother was the Irish side, the white lady, and my father was the Nigerian side. So I have 30% Nigerian in me. And the Higginbothams came to the United States in the 1700s to the tobacco plantations in Virginia. And all of my family, most of my family on my dad's side plays music. Or either they sang it, write it, play it, whatever. But I think they understood what oppression was, because that's just what slavery was. It was oppression. And from oppression, you know, we didn't have you couldn't go to the therapist. You couldn't lay on the couch and tell all your problems, you know. So you wake up in the morning and you feel like, dang, I got to get out here on this tobacco plant, or I got to get out here on this sugar plant, because everybody thinks it's just cotton, but it's not just all cotton. And you got to work out there in the 100 degrees weather for 16, 17, 18, 20 hours a day. Somewhere you're going to feel like you need therapy. So you're going to sit down and write, well, I took that bag today, and I'm so tired, you know. So to me, blues came from the situation of oppression. And the other thing about blues, too, that I like to share with you guys is that the plantation owners thought blues was something evil. Oh, they're out there singing again, or they're out there chanting again, or they're out there doing this again. So we can't have them singing the blues. We need to not let them sing the blues. We're going to call it the blues. And so blues actually came to the South and got cultivated in the Delta, in the Mississippi Delta, and down south. So blues has been around for a long time. Blues came to this country in 1619, and it is the most precious gift that the American people could ever have. I mean, it's the most precious gift. So that's what blues is to me.
Scott Beretta and I are here representing the Mississippi Blues Trail, and one of the slogans of Mississippi is that the birthplace of America's music, but Scott and I don't claim that. So the blues actually came from a lot of different places. You know, Mississippi was the primary place where it developed, but it was in response to the conditions that Marquise and Teeny have described, you know, that African Americans had to experience in this country. And it happened, you know, throughout the southern states and up and down the Mississippi and Ohio rivers. So it's hard to say where it started. You know, there's maybe no one point where we can say it started. But as Willie Dixon used to say, the blues was a means of survival. Willie Dixon was the great songwriter for blues in Chicago. He came from Mississippi. And he said it was a means of survival of his people. And it's been adapted by cultures and races and nations all over the world. But I think it's important that we never forget the origins of where it came from.
I personally don't know where it come from, when it started. I really don't care. Look where I'm going with this, because one thing for sure is something that I love, something I know about, something I came from. Because I can speak on some issue at my age now about the blues and what it means to me. Blues are the roots of all music. If you don't like the blues, you probably don't like your mama. Because blues not the only thing in this world that we love because it's blues, but I'm talking from a blues standpoint because I'm a blues man. I have read some places back in some books that had come from slavery because people were talking among the masters, and masters know what they were talking about, like, oh, I'm gonna leave in the morning, just before the break of day. That was a sign to the people who they were trying to escape. And we still trying to escape. We're gonna talk about a lot of things today. There's a lot of things could happen and should have happened, and it didn't happen. What we gotta do now is find a way now to make it better for tomorrow.
Yes, sir.
So let's talk a little bit more about the historical context and origins of the blues. Why is it essential that we know that, and why is knowing that essential for the survival of the blues?
Well, I guess I can say again, because we need to teach people what the blues mean to me, so I can relate it down to my children, and related to you, you probably don't know, because let me tell you a little story about myself. The one that don't know that I've been recording this year for 67 years. I had my ups, I had my downs. I had my good, bad, but the good overtake the bad. I'm now at my 377 records. Although I got the Grammy a few years ago, a couple years ago I believe it is now, I forget because it took me so long to get it. I say that because in this world we live in, a lot of ups, a lot of downs, a lot of this, a lot of that, but we got to find a way to find the way to get it better. We all know what's wrong, but none of us seem to know how to fix it. My idea today is trying to fix it through love and relationship. And you all love the music. Because I remember when I started recording in 1951, myself and J.B. Lenore, Jimmy Reed, a few other guys were working in Chicago. In Chicago, where we went behind a curtain, where they wanted to hear our music, they want to see our face. That's the blues. I'm not talking about we should dwell on that forever, but look at it now. Something's been fixed. May not be all the way well, but something's been fixed. You may not like my music. You may not like what I do, but I try to be good at what I'm doing. So when you see me, you say, I don't like Bobby Rush, but damn, he good.
And I think it's important to tie it in, especially to today, because a lot of people think because black people no longer have to pick cotton, we no longer work on the county farm, that those traditions and those practices that was held against us yesterday, as if they disappeared and it's still present today, and it still gives us the blues. As I tell my friends when we talk about the blues, I said when we was trying to do civil rights, and the problem was we wanted accommodation. We was asking people, please let us sit at the counter and eat. Don't worry about that I'm black. And now what do they have us doing? We go to the side of the building, order. You go right around the other side of the building, pick up. It's no different to me than eating out of the back door. There's no different when you go inside of the store, especially for me. I live in Bowling Green, Missouri. It's an all-white town, maybe 0.2% black. When I go inside the Walmart, people look at me like I'm getting ready to steal. When I go inside of places folks are not familiar with me, especially if it's an all-white setting, I get looked at as if I'm other, if I don't, like I said, I'm getting ready to steal. And to me, that is the blues, because that makes me connected now to my grandfather, my grandmother. Yes. I now begin to understand how they felt. They were just completely barred. Now they let me in. That's equality. Equality is tricky. Equality is an equity. Equality is saying that, yeah, you can come in, but that don't mean that we're going to treat you right once you get in. And that is what the blues world has to understand now, tying it into today. There's no real equity for the black artists inside of the blues. Look at all the money being made off of the blues, off of our people's history, off of our folks' struggles, and you calculate the amount of money that the black people take in, you calculate on what our counterparts, our brothers and sisters on the white side take in. You look at the poverty disparity, and then you can begin to see that the practices inside of daily life works its way into each and every facet of life, no matter if it's at McDonald's, if it's at Starbucks, or even if it's at the church. So these are the things that we have to get real about and say, don't just say, well, these guys not serious about their culture. Well, some of us can't afford to go out here and not work a job and try to play the blues.
Come on now.
So if you are fortunate enough to be like someone else who can go out here and perform the blues and play it, that's a blessing. But the blues is those people who never, ever got a chance to hit a stage before. Like my grandmother, she come out of Grenada, Mississippi in 1932. My great uncle, 1929. These are the people that I learned from. They want to instill in me what it was, not only just to be black, but to be a man and then stand up and say it in front of anybody, despite the consequences that may come with it.
But I think what the key point that you're making is in your statement was that there's a mythology that is out there where we romanticize the traditional blues musician that rises up from the cotton field, and that you illustrated that there's a new blues musician, the urban blues musician. That's what you've described is that these are the more modern challenges.
It's the same thing. It didn't change. The only thing changed, some of us got older and some of us died. That's the only difference, but it's the same laws are in place. You got more, you take the amount of black men locked up versus the amount of free black women, then you can begin to see the disparity inside of going back into the community. We can't even make the money off of the blues being black artists. And then our friends can go out here and they can buy a home, they can buy a car, they can do these things that better their lives, and we doing the same thing. And when you see a lot of these black blues guys and women, they are in terrible health, teeth falling out of their head, high blood pressure, bags up underneath their eyes. This is because you dedicated your life to something that's not quite, not saying the music, but the business, who is not dedicated to the people. I don't feel like the business, I think it's there. As Mr. Rush said, evidently there have been good things to happen, but it hasn't been the complete picture in which we all want, because here I am, 27 years old. Mr. Rush is going to be 86, and those problems that existed in his day still can be found in my day.
Yes.
And that is a major problem.
Yes.
A major problem.
Yes.
Teeny, illustrate, you said that there are some parallels for your own experience. Can you talk about that?
Okay, my father passed away in 1982. And at that time, I was in a gospel choir at church singing. And one of his promoters overseas from Germany called me. He said, "Teeny, do you do the blues?" And I said, "No, I don't sing blues." And he said, "Well, I want you to sing some blues." I said, "Well, I don't sing blues. I sing gospel or the top 40 or whatever. I'm doing a wedding or whatever." And at that time, I had three children, was married, and I'm thinking, he said, "I'm going to send you a cassette." You remember the little cassette tapes? He sent me 20 songs on there. It had people like Nina Simone and Etta James and Coco Taylor and all. He said, "You learn 10 songs off of there. I'm going to bring you over to Europe and let you tour." So I said, "Okay." At the time, I'm working for the federal government. I worked for the federal government for 33 years because the blues couldn't pay my bills. So, but I'm going to tell you the downfall of that, though. And so I learned all 20 songs. He gave me 20 songs to learn. I learned all 20. They took me over to Europe, and I toured over there my first time for like 8 weeks. And I started falling in love with the blues. I started falling in love with the blues women and the things that they had gone through. And we'll talk a little bit more about that when we get to that. But I started falling in love with those kind of things. And I was like, man, this music is so good. And so I went over there, and he gave me the song, "Something Got a Hold on Me," yeah. With the Etta James song. And I said, yeah, it did get a hold on me. It's got a hold on me too. I don't even want to let it go. And so the church people say, well, you're bad because you're singing blues and you need to stay with the church. Well, the devil don't own no music. It's too beautiful. That's what I say. And so I'm going to sing what I want to sing as long as you got a message. So I went over and I started, developing my career. And I worked 33 years for the feds as a contracting officer. And I built a 25-year music career doing that because I needed to pay my bills. I needed to make money. And the blues wasn't paying me that. So then when I get established and I'm making the money, and I'm putting money and saving it like people supposed to do, right? Then the blues people, this is what you hear. Well, they're not going to let you have any more jobs because you got a job. You making money. And you're going to be taking a job away from somebody else. Well, how can you take a job away from somebody else when God has gifted you to bless the people with your voice, to bless the people with your talent? So I started other kind of ways of making myself get out there, and not just for me, but for what I had to share with them. Because sometimes you talk about the blues, it's not just a blues journey, it's a spiritual journey. It's something that is deep down inside you. So when I started listening to that and saying, well, they're not going to hire you and nobody's going to sign you up as an artist. So I went the hard route. I went the hard way, but guess what? I would never, ever take it back. When I see somebody out there dancing that got cancer and they had bone cancer, and they come to me after I'm done and say, you know what, I don't like blues, but I like your blues. That means something to me. I don't like it, but I like your blues. I like it because you touch me. Or the woman come and tell me, my husband dancing and he had cancer for 6 months on chemo and he couldn't even stand up. But when he heard you sing, he stood up to the table and held on to the table just... Right. Because that's a feeling, and people know when it comes from where it comes from. It's a feeling. I always say blues. I love y'all's guitar playing. I love y'all saxophones, but ain't nothing like the vocal, baby. Because we tell a story. Blues tell a story with your vocals, and that's what I try to do. But that's what blues means to me. And my blues is not predicated on somebody hiring me for a festival or somebody telling me I'm going to go here, I'm going to go there. My blues is predicated on what's in my heart. Yeah. That's my blues predicated on.
Okay, so I think we talked a little bit about what it means to be a modern blues musician, some of those challenges therein, particularly as a black blues musician. But I want to go back a little bit to some of the historical challenges and some of the historical issues with the blues. And one of the things that we've seen is that music has been seen as being very integral to the civil rights movement, right? But when we look back at how the story is told, the blues isn't present in the civil rights movement. And I know, Mr. Rush, you were very involved with Dr. King. Could you tell us a little bit about why, when we talk about music in the movement, the blues isn't there? And can you talk a little bit about your work in the civil rights movement as a blues musician?
Music been so important with every movement, especially the spiritual song, We Shall Overcome with Martin Luther King. And I remember a many movement that he done, many speakers he spoke. He used the entertainers, a lot of time blues singers, to draw people in so they could hear him speak about the music. From Fats Domino to Aretha Franklin to all the guys that had a name to draw people into a place. Because it was about drawing in to that. I remember I got pretty close to him in 1963. I was coming from Rock Island, Illinois myself, Ike Turner, and my drummer, Robert Plunking, was in this station wagon. And a car came in, a truck rather, hit my car. I was put in the station wagon with a trailer behind it. It knocked my trailer in the ditch and turned it over, knocked me out the car, my drummer knocked him out the car. And this truck that hit me, another truck hit him, until 10 trucks hit each other. And all 10 men got burned up. I was in the ditch, dug a hole in 0 degree, and to try to find some help because it's so dark and foggy. I remember the sheriff department, somebody came, a bunch of men, I could hear a bunch of footsteps, and they were so long about coming to see us after 2 or 3 hours or whatever, and someone said, "Is anybody else down?" Someone said in the group, "Just 2 niggas in the ground, they already buried. Leave them there." And they left me in the ground. 3 or 4 hours later, someone come and found myself, took me to the hospital. Then Martin Luther King found out about the situation. He came to Chicago to speak in Cicero, Illinois, but they wouldn't let him speak there. So I knew a guy at Purvis Band at WGON. I said, "Purvis Band, we got to get a play for Martin Luther King to speak at 4720 Austin Street." So I was riding people back and forth to come to see him. Little Milton, Howlin' Wolf, and Muddy Waters was an entertainment for him to draw people to see him. So I got there a little late that night to try to make sure people would come to see Martin Luther King speak. So me and my son, who would be 6 years old, then he was only about 4 or 5 years old at that time. So we ran up the street to park, and when we parked, some guys got at us with a baseball bat and turned my station wagon over and set it on fire. We ran to the police station to get some help. The police threw me and my son out and said, "Take that nigga with you and go yourself." Talk about me and Martin Luther King. Then I got tied up with him trying to be involved with the movement. So if you go online, you'll see where Bobby Rush bus at many times was involved, even in Mississippi, carrying people to vote. It ain't hard to find out. That's why you see Bobby Rush with the Martin Luther King Awards. If you just Google it, you'll find it yourself. The reason you probably don't know, that little guy was sitting there was named Emmett Ellis Jr. You probably don't know it because my name is Emmett Ellis Jr. It wasn't Bobby Rush, because Emmett Ellis Jr. is my real name. Thank you. One more thing I want to add to what you're saying. You see, some of the things we complaining about, I'm not really complaining, but as a whole, we as black entertainers gave some of the things we have away. I applaud to the white musician who love the blues, because if it wasn't for you love the blues and the white guys who playing it, you would know about some of us. And that's the truth. But I'm not sad about that. But what I'm sad about, because back in the day, they made a wall. Talking about the musician now, they made a wall. So the white guy could sound like the black guy. And now you got the black guy down wall to sound like a white guy who sounded black. That bothered me. And and I don't want to leave this stage by leaving thinking that all people are wrong or what have you. Because I'm gonna tell you something. This real person, I never said this before the day of the two at the table. Jim O'Neill was the first man who wrote about Bobby Rush at a crossover, and the second man was Paul Beaton. He stuck his neck out. Now I got the girls on the stage with me. You know how they look. They bringing me up to but no, all white, and some guy looking, ooh, you know. But he took a chance on me. You took a chance on me. But I knew if I did this, I'll be the guy that's doing it because, hey, I'm a musician. I'm a blues singer. And on top of it, I want you to know that I'm a black blues singer. And I'm glad of it. I'm not ashamed of it. I am that I am. Yeah.
Thank you. I don't think anybody could have done it like Bobby Rush did either. On the subject of civil rights and the blues as protest music, people don't think of the blues as protest music, but that's really one of the but it actually, that's one of the primary themes of it. It's trying to get the freedom from mistreatment, the freedom from oppression. And there's hidden meanings in the blues. And a great blues man from Alabama named Willie King told me about this one time. He said, and this was passed on to him from an older blues man. And he said, you know, when you're singing about the woman, oh, my woman mistreated me, maybe that's really, it's a hidden meaning for the boss man. But you couldn't come out and say those things explicitly back then. You might get lynched, you know, no telling what would happen to you. So there's secret codes and hidden meanings in the blues that I think have been really lost over the generations, but they're, you know, if you study them, they're still there.
So I want to stay with the historical moment because I feel like a lot of times when we have these blues and race or race and whatever conversations, there's a missing component. How many women musicians do we have in the audience today? Vocalists, instrumentalists? Yes! Yes, raise your hands high, ladies. Yes. So we leave out gender, and we love you and you're fabulous. We leave out gender in the conversation. So, Teeny, could you just talk a little bit historically about the role of women in blues music, especially black women, because it gets overlooked, whether it's in the civil rights movement, whether it's in race music. We look over their role in making the music popular, making the music relevant, even as protest music. They play a role, but it's overlooked. Can you talk about that?
At the turn of the century, like the 20th century, women weren't really being recognized in the blues. And to tell you the great big role that we played in the blues around that time, there was a record label called Oakey Records. And Oakey Records signed Sophie Tucker, was a white woman that could sing blues, or she sounded like she could sing blues. And there was a guy named Perry Bradford. And Perry Bradford was like the modern day Quincy Jones. Okay, and Perry Bradford was a great songwriter, a great arranger, and all the record companies back then that was in existence, from Paramount Records to Black Swan Records to Oakey Records, they were interested in getting this guy to come and write songs for them and pick people to. It's like an artist person of the day that goes and pick the artist. And so Sophie Tucker got sick, and so Sophie Tucker, they had a deadline. They said, well, we need to get this song out. Because we got a deadline. And so Perry Bradford convinced the president of Oakey Records to let him record Mamie Smith. And Mamie Smith was a pretty little old black lady from Cincinnati, Ohio, but she moved to New York to join the cabaret. And she was an intelligent black woman. And they didn't really want black women recording back then because they didn't think they could articulate the song, or they didn't want to put their pictures on the cover of the albums or anything like that. And, you know, they thought that everybody talked like, lies, lies, bless the Lord. Don't you know that the days are born? think I'm gonna let you sleep. You know, and they thought all black women spoke that way, but not Mamie Smith. So he convinced them to come in and let Mamie Smith record it. Well, she had recorded prior to that, but there was some kind of dissension about, well, I don't think we should really release this because nobody's gonna buy it. And it was called A Thing Called Love. And so that sat around for a long time before they even released it. And it didn't do very well. And so he said, well, I got a really great composition. It's called Crazy Blues. And every woman, I don't care what color you are, you can relate to it. And so they brought her in and they recorded it. And she did a song that I bet you every woman in this room can relate to, or you know somebody that can relate to. She said, I can't sleep at night. I can't eat a bite, 'cause the man I love, he won't treat me right. And they was like, whoa, who's singing that? 75,000 copies in 1 month. First woman that ever, black woman, the first black blues song ever on record, period, was from a woman. And they sold 75,000 copies in the South. Then it started going up to the North, then the Midwest, then the East Coast, and that was called race music. And they called it race music because it identified or distinguished between what was black music and what was white music. And they said, ooh, this race music sounded good. This woman done sold 75,000 copies. Paramount Records said, well, who we gonna get? We got to go find the next woman of the blues. And they went out and they started searching. And they found people like Lucille Hageman. They found people like Alberta Hunter. You know, and they just started finding all these great musicians. And I don't know if you ever heard of W.C. Handy or not, but W.C. Handy, yes, I know that. W.C. Handy and a guy named Harvey Pace said, wow, it's so good that we're going to start our own record label. So Black Swan was the first record label to ever be started back in the 20th century, okay? So when they started that record label, they signed Alberta Hunter, she was a great songwriter. If you ever get a chance to look up her story, she was a comeback lady. She came back at 82 years old because she couldn't make a living in blues, so she got her nursing degree and went to nursing school. But the woman has played a pivotal role in the blues, and we still want our right. You know what I'm saying? We even made you guys start getting recorded. You see what I'm saying? So yeah, so women play a huge role in the blues, and I think that nowadays you guys are starting to love the women of the blues too, right? Yeah. And if you don't hear their voices, you want to hear them. You want to hear these great songs. We want to hear women in blues, and we want to give women their credit where credit is due. And can I hear you say amen? Amen. Amen. Yeah.
Well, let's stick with women because, you know, I'm a feminist and the moderator, so I can do that. We're in a powerful moment in women's history, right? With what's happening. When we look at the hashtags, Mute R. Kelly, Me Too, and we've talked about blues as therapy for oppressed people and that conversation. How can the blues be used as a tool to help heal young black women and women of color? Or can it at all?
I think that we as women, especially black women, and I'm talking about the black side of me because if I went somewhere they wouldn't let me be white. But anyway, so black women, I think, when we have these festivals out here, a black woman should be represented just like a white woman should.
Say it again.
A black woman should be represented just like a black woman should. Listen, you're not going to go to a country musical festival and see black men up there with cowboy hats and cowboy boots and everybody there, what in the hell is going on here? You see what I'm saying? But we are kind, giving, we share our music. Black people that sing the blues, we love sharing our music. And that's not a problem at all. But please, please, all women, black, white, whatever you know where this comes from. Respect it. It is a black culture that needs to be respected at all times. And don't get up there and think that you're singing blues and you don't know the history of blues. Especially for, you know, I'm speaking for a woman. I know it doesn't just happen to women, but you got to learn the history. You got to know where it comes from. It is a culture that has been cultivated from years and years and years. I mean, it came over here. You guys, this actually, I'm going to tell you, it's one of the best gifts you could ever get. America has the best gift. American blues roots music is the music of all music. Okay? Stevie Ray Vaughan. I love Stevie Ray Vaughan. And he said to Albert King one day, he said, "You taught me everything I know." And Albert King said, "No, son, I ain't taught you everything I know." You see what I'm saying? And so he shared his music, but you don't know what he know. You understand what I'm saying? So I just think that, listen, I don't care if the belly of a donkey do the blues. As long as you know where it comes from and you respect its roots and its culture. That's all I'm saying. And that's what we got to learn how to do. Blues, and when I say blues music, actually integrated race before the civil rights movement. Because if you got a black woman doing music and white people buying it, then that's integration. And then you jump up to the 50s and the 60s, it was the young white kids that liked the black music, so they start buying the black music. So really, this music, blues, integrated us way before the civil rights movement. Now, did it integrate us in the right kind of way? I mean, it brought us together because we love the music.
Right.
We love the music. When blues arrived in the 20th century, I'm talking about the real blues, like the race blues, it integrated us. It integrated us some kind of way. But where did we lose touch with that? It still needs to be integrated. And I don't know if it is. I don't know if one culture is taking over the blues and another culture is losing out. But we need to look, that's something we need to look at. And we should never, and you talk about keeping the blues alive. That's keeping the blues alive, keeping it where it originated from, the culture that it originated from.
We can find many areas, many things that we want to talk about that's wrong. But we got to find a way for men and women to get together and try to erase and make things better than it used to be. I'm not saying you're wrong about what you're saying. You're right about that. I was saying earlier, we all know what's wrong, but we got to find a way to mend this gap and cut in life. It's about the blues. It's about the love of each other. We all live here in America, and where's America, where's overseas, or whatever it is, it's about people first. I just happen to be a blues singer. I don't think nothing hurt me much better than a guy who hired me in 1949 and said he gonna give me a payday. And I wasn't educated enough to know what was a payday. I thought it was big money. I worked all the week for this man called E.L. Bridges. And at the end of the week, he gave me a payday. I'm talking about Bob Cannon. Now that's my fault because I didn't know what he was talking about. There's many times and places we don't know. But we have to be, as people, to educate ourselves to how to go about doing these things. If it's cutting a record, recording a record, booking yourself in the whole bit. Let me tell you something about me. I'm an independent person. 50 years ago, I was going to book myself till I found a good agent to book me. I was going to write for myself till I found a good writer to write for me. That's what I do too. I'm going to address that. I'm going to do all these things. When I found out I was the one who could do it. You said that's what you do. I don't know why you wanted to do that, but I can almost bet you that ain't what you want to do. No. Because see what I'm talking about? No, not at all. No, I'm saying something. You do that because you ain't got no other choice, because nobody else won't do it. Because I won't book myself. If Paul Benjamin tells me about Rooster, I'm going to give you $2 million a year, you don't have to book yourself no more. He got a job. My manager, you going to be my manager tonight?
You pay me 3.
I said I pointed Paul out because I know that sometimes things are said about entertainers, about promoters around the country. I'm not saying it's the best promoter in the world, but I know some things that Paul have done in this business for black entertainers, black musicians, that I can't say a lot of them have done. And I take my hat off to you for that.
I want to say, Robert, you did
Well, I'm just thank more people. Because sometimes we get bad names, but see, everybody ain't bad. We got to we talk about everybody bad. Everybody, white people ain't bad. Man, you got good bad people on both sides of the fence. Right. You know, our president of the, I won't call what she's the president of because I don't like her that well. You know what I'm talking about, Barbara. I just love her to death. She knows that. Barbara, thank for what you do. Thank your husband for what he do. You've been kind to me, so being kind to me, I can pass it down to someone else. I'm not saying what you're saying was wrong, but I can tell you this. It's a time and a place for everything.
You know, Thelonious Monk, how many people know Thelonious Monk? He said, you know, they tried to get me to hate white people. He said, but every now and then somebody comes along and spoils it. Because there is people that for the right thing, and I think that's probably some of what you're saying.
You said right by one.
Yes.
You mean the right thing. Jim started this book about the blues and whatever. Had his record label, Rooster Record, wasn't it? Now I'm speaking about a couple guys. It's many the same way. I've been in this town for now for 2 days. I met all kind of people come up to me talking about what they think about me, how they love me, what I look like. One lady said I look young. I know she lied. I just said that because I want to get a laugh. But some good people in this world. And we have to stop putting good people down because of a few bad people.
Yes.
We have to find a way. We have to find a way to make this work between black and white, brown, whatever. It don't make no difference what happened. What about now? Right. What about right now? Right. And I'm telling you, I love you, man.
Love you too, buddy. Always happy.
And listen, I got to tell you this. I met Doc on the phone. This is true. I had a plan to say this. When I met this young lady, something just went through me. I never met you before, but something went through me when I met you. And I can understand a lot of things because one thing I have learned in this old age that I'm smart enough to know I don't know nothing. Because when a man tell what he know, he won't talk long, but a man don't know nothing. What I know, when I saw you, you were the lady for this job. Thank you for your question.
Thank you. Bobby, you know, and Bobby's the kind of guy, he gives back too. Even though you guys don't know it, he's a great philanthropist. And also, I want to thank him for what he's done for me because he recognized what I do, and he's put me in some positions that have been very, very, very recognizable. I mean, with the rush to...
Because of Robert.
No, with the Rush Through History Project and all that, so I just want you to know, Bobby.
Thank you.
I really appreciate that. And I'm glad you saw something in me, brother.
Yeah, I did.
One more question, then we'll open it up for a Q&A from the audience, with the audience. And you talked about a little bit about this, Mr. Rush, but what does the future of the blues look like? What do we need to do to ensure the complexities of this history and this legacy moves forward in the 21st century?
We have to get the Blues Foundation, the radio station, the newspaper, and everybody speak good things about the blues because black people as a whole, not including you, but a lot of people don't want to be blues singers because it's been written and stated and said that blues was something less than something else. It was only less than something else till the white guys played it. Then it was all right. Because when you go here, I won't call it a name, white artists playing, you can bet you if you listen to them, the third song gonna be some black guy's song they playing. I had such a good time last night, but I heard everything I heard it in 1950. But nothing wrong with it, but as old as I am, I heard it before. It was just new to the young folks. It wasn't nothing new to me. I didn't say it was bad or good. I said it wasn't new. You follow me? But I don't understand, but what I don't understand is which come first. I don't think you understand. No either. Which come first, the egg or the hen? Why don't you think about that for me?
Jim, you want to comment on that?
Well, as for the future of the blues, when Bruce Ziglauer and Amy Van Sinkle and Paul Guerin and I and some other friends started Living Blues magazine back in 1970, one of the things that we heard was that the blues is dead, or the blues is dying. And that's why Bruce was the one who came up with the name Living Blues magazine. And 50 years later, it's still being published. And there's always going to be reasons for people to have the blues. I don't think the blues is going to go away. It's just that I think the blues artists now are probably having a harder time than they were when we started the magazine.
Exactly.
And we need to address that situation and support the blues and the community that it came from.
I don't know what we can do, or what can be done to make it better for the young people who's coming up singing the blues or singing anything they want to sing. I don't know what we can do. I really don't know. I'm at a loss. When I learn, I'll take it. When you learn, you tell me. I just don't know what we can do. I'm at a standstill.
I think coming up, I've come up with some pretty recognizable names. Samantha Fish, Danielle Nicole. Right now, my brother Kingfish, John Tavis Willard, Selma Birchwood, Jerika Singleton, just the long list. And I think it just has to be a way, if we can get the festival, like Mr. Rush just said, get the record label, maybe not so much as the record label problem, as it is just to say we want to dedicate our slots and make sure that we are highlighting at least the heritage and culture. We got to call it heritage and culture to make sure we are placing somebody like that on there and pair us up. If it wasn't for guys like Mr. Rush, when he come to St. Louis back in 2007, I did a show with him. I was a teenager. Honey Boy Edwards, Pontopp Perkins, Henry Townsend was my mentor. These were the old branch of the blues. Then I met Louisiana Red and like I said, Mr. Rush, and this is the second tier, B.B. King and all of these guys. And now when we get down to Kenny Neal and those guys, we're beginning to even have a lack up because a lot of artists just are dying. Then we just lost our brother Michael Ledbetter at 33 years old. Then we lost 2013 or 2014, 15, we lost Eric Guitar Davis. So I think one way to help promote the genre itself and to give it more longevity, Nas did a project with his father. His father played trumpet, and he sampled the blues with rap. Now they did it on a more technical side using synthesizers and stuff like that. But if we can get Snoop Dogg or even get local rappers, pair local rappers with blues artists, take songs like, I don't want to give nobody my idea now. But take songs like Born on the Bad Sign. Let a rapper rap on top of Born on the Bad Sign. And then come back with the hook. Born on a bad sign. Then thousands I begin to crawl. Mr. Rush got a song called Bertha Jean. A lot of guys love rapping about it. A lot of women love singing about how beautiful they look. Mr. Rush wrote a song called Bertha Jean. She dipped in the waist like a waltz. Side by side, she built like a stallion horse. That's rapping. Now, can you imagine we get a rapper and get real serious about it and then pull up a legend like himself? To me, I look at Mr. Rush as like the Rudy Ray Vaughan of the Dolomite. I mean, real poetic when it comes down to that kind of music.
I'm a rapper. You know, I often talk about the rapping music, whatever. It's no different. I say this because I know most people here probably don't like no rap, but you never hear Barbara Rich talk about the rappers. I don't endorse everything they do and say. Even the pants where they hang down. I didn't say I like it, but if you lift the head level up, the pants will come with it. Because, I guess because a rapper stole that stuff from me and James Brown. We were rapping all the time. If it wasn't for Bobby Rush, wouldn't be no 50 cent, be a dime a quarter.
Teeny, did you want to add?
Well, I just decided probably about a month ago, at the end of February, beginning of March, I'm going to go into the inner city schools. I've already talked to some folks, and I'm going to try to start talking to some of those kids, especially particularly girls. And you know, you got girls that sing. They don't know why they sing. I just like to sing because I sing. But to put some meaning to that, and I'm doing it for free because just to get started. And then I'm going to mentor 2 young girls from my hometown that are going to come to me for free. I have a YouTube website out there on how to do vocal runs, and it's like 85,000 views now. And I just had a girl come up to me today. She said, "Miss Tucker, I looked at your YouTube 50 times." I said, "So you the one got me to 85,000 views." I thought it was more than just you. But yeah, so I mean, we as black women, and Anika and I, we talked about this a couple times before. We have to go out into the schools and go out and prevail, you know, compel them to come in and say, "This is some good stuff here. You need to learn what the history is all about." And if you choose to go back and do R&B or rap or whatever, at least you have the history of it all. And that's the thing, because everybody's not going to sing blues. Everybody don't love blues. Blues is probably, what, 10% of the music industry or less? And they're not. Everybody's not going to love blues, but they might like your blues.
So, from this audience, what would you request? What can they do?